just basically go in the first slide. Oops, doesn't work. All right, so first of all, hello and welcome everyone. Again, my name is Giulio Astori, and I'll be one of your hosts, presenter for today's sessions. With me, obviously, we have Tom. So this is the very first slide of our entire deck. And this slide might seem like it's kind of, staging the obvious, right? It's kind of rhetorical, right? It's the same message we just pretty much continuously repeat every time, all right? But it serves as a crucial foundation for the sessions. Basically, it's very important to emphasize and always emphasize how crucial it is to keep your cloud system safe. Think of the cloud like a constantly changing and complex digital world, right? New services and features are always popping up in your environment. It's like a bit like trying to keep up with a fast moving puzzle. People, developers create cloud application using lots of different tools and ways. Such makes it very tough to watch out for all the ways things can go wrong with your security. Also, the application can change and grow very quickly, making security even trickier. Additionally, some rules, regulations basically say that we must protect sensitive stuff in the cloud. And those regulations, those rules can also change very frequently. Therefore, organizations need a solid plan for the cloud security, and this plan should cover few main things. Number one, visibility. Organization must gain deep visibility in their cloud infrastructure, in the configurations, and in the activity, so they can proactively identify all the potential security risk. Second, protections. Robust security control must be implemented to safeguard the cloud resources and the data. Such controls are going to be implemented to protect against unauthorized access, modifications, and why not distractions. Finally, compliance. Organizations, companies must adhere to all relevant regulations. There are governing the protections of sensitive data in the cloud or even like in the traditional on-prem. And these have to ensure that remain up to date with the evolving requirements. So cloud is important? Yes, it is. Now, cloud security and protection needs. So overall, organizations do need strong security for their cloud systems. And this includes protecting their workloads and the network. But it's not just about having the security itself. It's also about understanding how this security is implemented, what is its postures, okay? As organizations create and use more cloud-based applications, as we say, developer continue, they are keeping and creating more apps, right, in the cloud. Those organizations need security throughout the entire process. They need to secure the entire process, from building the software to running it in the cloud. This means shifting the focus of the security earlier in the development process. Many people known as shifting security to the left, or the DevSecOps. Finally, those organizations need to understand the vulnerabilities exposed by the cloud identities, the risk associated with those identities, the level of their permissions, and their role. Basically, they need a solution called CSPM, the Cloud Infrastructure Entitlement Management. Microsoft Defender for Cloud has evolved into, the Microsoft Defender for Cloud has basically evolved into a comprehensive security solution for cloud system. And through this evolvement and through these evolutions is now fully aligned with the concept of a cloud native application protection platform, aka for short CNAPP. CNAPP is a name is basically a term that was coined by Gartner, okay, a few years ago, basically, actually in 2023. Also, Microsoft was named part of the Garden quadrant, okay? Now, as you can see, Microsoft Defender for Cloud, it is basically now considered a single platform that provides security for cloud systems across all the providers, AWS, GCP, Azure, but following all the requirement to fulfill the CNAPP model. Four main pillars are constituting the Microsoft's Defender for Cloud solutions. One is the notion of protecting workloads. The second one is obviously the posture management. But then we have we have the DevSecOps, and also we have the KEAM part included into this offering. We also integrate across your cloud infrastructure with the Microsoft Purview. We have integration with the Azure Network Security. We easily integrate with the SIEM solution, especially Sentinel. And then we have other integrations with the Microsoft Defender External Attack Surface Management, also known as the ESAM, which is basically a sort of threat intel component. Now let's go ahead and start shifting our conversations into the cloud workload protections. Defender for Cloud, when it comes to CWPs, is capable to protect a large number of resources type. To start, we have full support for any servers in Azure or outside of the Azure. Also, we support the Azure VMS servers. Equivalently, we support the Azure AKS, basically the Azure version of the Kubernetes clusters, app services, and as well as regular unmanaged Kubernetes clusters. And this is basically considered the compute system type. Moving down into the list, we see that we are providing support to protect and have visibility into the Azure DNS, as well as into the Key Vault. But not only that, we provide visibility and security protection for the network layer V1 and for the resource management, also known as Azure Resource Management, or ARM, which stands at its core, at the Azure core for managing all the resources, developing resources, building, and so on and so forth. In terms of database storage, we provide a plan to protect your blob storage, your file storage, but also database. We provide support for obviously SQL. In terms of SQL, we support Azure SQL, which is a PaaS type of SQL resource. But not only that, we also support traditional SQL on VMs. If you build your VM and install instances, we protect that as well. We extend similar type of support to open source database. MariaDB is one of those. MySQL is the other, Postgres. But then, besides that, we also support CosmoDB. Moving away from Azure, we now move into the AWS and Google Cloud. When it comes to the AWS, we're able to protect the AWS VMs, known as EC2 instances, but also the Kubernetes version of AWS, known as EKS. We protect SQL on VMs running in Azure, so SQL running on EC2 instances, and anyone has built a IaaS type of Kubernetes cluster, basically using the EC2 unmanaged Kubernetes, we also allow to protect that. When we move into Google Compute VMs are also support. Equivalently, we support the SQL running on those VMs. If we want to protect the Kubernetes cluster built in GCP, we do that, and those are called GKE clusters, and of course, the unmanaged clusters for Kubernetes as well. Moving outside of the Azure and all the cloud itself, we look into on-prem, so everything which is pretty much considered legacy on-prem. We do also provide support on that. We protect Kubernetes built in on-premise environment, SQL on VMs, and of course, regular servers on your on-prem. In that form, okay, of protection, what we provide in terms of capability. Number one is the notion of detecting the actual threat. Okay, we basically detect and can generate an event and alert. Okay, those alerts are prioritized and then they are generated across compute, database, the cloud service layer, and more. Basically, pretty much what you've seen into the previous slide, right, in terms of protections. The detections, the alert, and event, everything that we find, it's also mapped with the MITRE ATT&CK framework mapping. So you have a better understand how the threat has affecting across the adversary attack life cycle. So we're mapping, those events, those alerts, those detections into the actual framework. But also we are enriching the detection of those events by leveraging Microsoft threat intelligence. By a year ago, we started to introduce the notion of agentless capability, and in such realm of capabilities, we have a series of agentless vulnerability assessment management features that can scan your VMs and scan your Kubernetes and scan also your data stores. Finally, we take those information, those events, those alerts, and we correlate into a form of a contextualized insight. Now, why server security in the cloud is different? Okay, so the actual, the running VMs, okay, basically running VMs in the cloud, wherever cloud it is, Azure or GCP, AWS, or wherever cloud it is, okay, presents some unique security challenges that require special attentions. Some of those we already explained in the first couple slides, okay? But here are three key reasons why the server security in the cloud is different from the traditional security, traditional server security, the one on-prem. Number one, we have the additional layer of security. When you run a VM in a cloud, you need an extra layer of security to protect the control plane that surrounds your servers. This control plane manages your cloud infrastructure, and securing it is a very crucial so that we can prevent unauthorized access and control. Second, extending the threat detections. Threat detection shouldn't be limited just to the server itself, okay? He needs to extend to connected cloud native components, including the network, the storage, and the control plane. This broader coverage is very essential to fully assess and protect the security states of your server and their surrounding environment. Finally, modern workload protections. To be effective in the cloud, modern workload protection solutions must provide not only traditional VM security, but also optimized detections and mechanisms tailored for cloud-based resources. Cloud environments are very dynamic, and security solutions must very quickly adapt to those changes so to remain effective. Furthermore, protecting VMs goes beyond safeguarding safeguarding just the operating system. There are general threats that apply to any server, whether in the cloud or not. First of all, we have the notion of lateral movement risk. Server can potentially store access credential to other cloud assets, such as key vaults, storage accounts, or why not, other server. This creates a risk of a lateral movement by attackers. Also, we have the notion of dynamic network exposure. Cloud servers often have dynamically defined network configuration, which can expose the actual server to the public internet. This dynamic nature makes tracking the security posture a challenge. Okay, so it's such a challenge. Finally, we have environment management. Those are also there are also the risk of environment management issue, such as unauthorized server taking over via compromise Azure subscription or account credential. Understanding those differences and addressing them is therefore essential to ensure that the security of your servers in the cloud is set and met the best level. Now, let's dig now into the actual Defender for Server plan. Defender for Cloud traditionally had one single plan, and about a year ago, we created an additional plan. The name maybe is a bit confusing because plan 1 and plan 2, where the plan 2 was traditional and plan 1 is the new add-on, but basically we have two plans. Number 1, the server plan 1 is what I call the plain native EDR solutions. It integrates with the Microsoft Defender for Endpoint, provides vulnerability assessment via Microsoft Defender Vulnerability Management. So it's a strictly Microsoft agent and solutions. And through the plan 1, you have the automated onboarding and alert and data integration. So the MDE, the Microsoft Defender for Endpoint onboarding, is very much simplified when you have Defender for Server plan 1. Moving to the plan 2, basically the previous the previous capabilities built for the plan 1 are obviously included in the plan 2. But additionally, in plan 2, we allow you to leverage the Agentless new set of vulnerability scanning. And we're going to go over a little bit more in detail. Okay. Additionally, we have the options to use Defender for Microsoft Defender for Vulnerability Management, which is MDVM. Currently, we still have an option to choose that or Qualys, or an options to bring your own license for Qualys and Red 7. Obviously, we have all cloud native detections, and those and finally we have cloud native controls adding into the plan, and those controls are the file integrity monitor, the adaptive application control, the adaptive network hardening, as well as the just-in-time VM access. Those are additional capabilities and feature sets of the plan 2. There is one more thing that is included in there, such as some allowance up to 500 meg for VM to ingest some specific data types into the log analytics. Now, I want to put some focus on the agentless VM scanning, okay, which is obviously the latest add-on to the plan, P2 plan. And I want to go a little bit more in detail. Number 1, let's cover what's happening, and this is a very common question. If I have both traditional agent-based and agentless scanning enabled, also known as a hybrid security approach. Well, with traditional Microsoft Defender for, with traditional based agent, so you have the MDE, MDM-DVM. What's happening? You have a deep operating system visibility. So through your process, through the communication happens through those processes, et cetera, et cetera. You have real-time monitoring and detection of attacks, and also you have the ability to enforce specific policies to prevent, to respond, and remediate those attacks. So having an agent through MDE and MDVM allows obviously all those things. However, you need to deploy the agent, and then you need to manage the deployments and as well as the the life health of those agents. Having agentless scanning on the other end has additional capability. Number one, at scale, you have some sort of, you have a sort of instantaneous visibility on the OS posture issues. So basically, we're able to, without having any installation of agent, without managing any agent, to have visibility in the possible vulnerabilities and the software that is present on the server. Also, because you don't have any agent installed, you don't have no performance impact on workloads. You can run additional EDR solutions, including vulnerability assessment solutions, Microsoft perhaps, not a Microsoft. And then you can still run this Agentless, which by the way is built on Microsoft MDVM in parallel without having any conflict on the other solutions and without actually put any additional resource strain on the workload. Finally, the security team does not depend on the workload owner only. So the question comes obviously naturally. Can you explain to me a little bit about the architecture behind or how this agentless scanning works? Well, let me give you first the very simple response. So the agentless leverages a snapshot of your VM disk and offline it basically runs the assessment upon it. Okay, but how this thing works in a little bit the details is the following. As soon as you enable the agentless vulnerability assessment or the agentless scanning for VM features under the settings of the Defender for Cyber Plan P2, an environment, a factory is built within the Azure environment, and it is fully aligned within the region of the subscription where you enable the plan and the feature. So if you are enabling the plan in US East, this factory for the scanning will be built in US East. Differently, if you use West region, it will be built in the data center. If it is in Europe, it will be built in the respective region that you use in Europe. So it is very much aligned with the region. Okay, that's the number one thing. So the factory gets built, and within this factory, there are two main components. One component is sort of like the orchestrator. The other one is the holding, temporary holding the holding components for the snapshots. Okay, for those disks. So periodically, on everyday basis, we have a set of process that are looking for if the plan is enabled or not. If the plan is enabled, it's going to look for and discover those VMs that needs to be scanned. As the VM is discovered, a disk copy or disk snapshot is executed, and then the actual snapshot is then moved into this factory environment where the disk is mounted and then scanned by the MDVM. At that point, MDVM generates its report. The disk itself and the VM that is temporarily hosting the disk to be scanned will be purged. And this usually takes between 30 minutes to 1 hour. Okay. The assessment is complete. The data is reported back to Defender for Cloud, and it is then shared through the portal. Today, the refresh interval, it is 1 day, meaning like every 24 hours, you will have a refresh report based on the previous scan. Okay. Now, what's happening besides scanning for vulnerability and scanning for the software inventory? Well, other things will take place. Well, besides MDVM at this point, we have other sets of engine that will do additional type of actions. The first engine that is also running besides MDVM is the engine that is looking for secrets, possible secrets found on the VM. Through this engine, now we expose secrets that are in clear text inside of any file in this VM. Secrets such as SSH private key or SES token for accessing data store. We have in a pipeline also the the ability to further enhance the scanning by scanning for the malware, and other feature sets, other capability are also scheduled to be built in the future months. Now, let's go a little bit more into a simulated demo for the agentless scanning and secret scanning. First thing, you open up your Defender for Cloud portal. From here, you go into the recommendations. Once you are on the recommendation, the very first thing you're going to do it is to search for the specific recommendations that pertains related to vulnerabilities. Okay, so what you do a search. Otherwise, you click on remediate vulnerability, and then under that, you will easily find the security recommendation for vulnerability. So again, you do that search, you open up remediate vulnerabilities, and then there are a couple of vulnerabilities, couple of security that you want to focus on. The first that we want to is number one, obviously, machine should have vulnerability finding a result, which means as a scan has taken place, and therefore we have a results from there. The other thing is machine should have vulnerability assessment solution, meaning like, let's check what servers are not compliant, are not healthy. That basically means that they don't have a VA configured on it. But let's say you have all the VA configured, then look into the vulnerability findings, you should be able to drill through all those vulnerabilities. Defender for MDVM projects those vulnerability with an ID which is alphanumeric. So you can see first is C73GEB, okay? And then you have the individual security check, the category, and then how many resources this vulnerability is applicable to it, and then the severity. Also, you have a way to click on the affected resource and see where are those resources. You also, of course, just like any other security controller, you have steps into remediate, so on and so forth. If you click next, if you click on the vulnerability itself, then you have a more detail into it. Number one is the notion of what are the CVEs, okay? And then how those CVEs are applicable to your resources. And what is the CVE severity, as well as the score and the version of the CVSS. Typically, it's a version 3. Down below over here, you're going to have the affected machine. And if you click each individual, it should be obviously, a shorter list of this affected machine. But one more thing that I want to highlight over here is this sections over here: Agentless, Microsoft Defender Vulnerability Management. Meaning, like, let's say that I have both solution enabled, agent-based and not. Through here, I have also evidence this came from the Agentless. Okay. What about the secret? Same thing under remediate vulnerability. You have a machine should have a secret finding resolved. If you click it on it, it should take right on the page where those findings are exposed in detail. Perhaps here there is an insecure Azure Storage SES token found on 17 server. If you look further by clicking on it, you're going to see details around it. So you see the actual machines where this specific secret has found that on it. And here you can obviously take actions by investigating and remediating, by obviously remove the SES token in this case, or if there is an SSH, you can do that as well. Now, one thing we also do when it comes to secrets, it's not only the notion exposed on the actual secret, it's also the ability to test the secret, meaning like we are going to see if the destinations of the secret is indeed accessible alive or something that doesn't exist anymore. Most likely, perhaps if it's an SSH key, private key, we're going to see if there are any server containing public key that is being created from this private, and therefore we expose the exploitability through that. Now, what about further enhancing this information besides just exposing through the recommendations? Well, we do that because those informations are mean for the contextualization of the security, as I expressed earlier in the sessions. So what we do, we take that information and we now contextualize in a broader view, and that is attack path analysis. Now, through attack path analysis, you can see how one vulnerability can lead to another vulnerability, can lead the attacker to move into another resources, maybe having other vulnerability as well. Here, there are several vulnerabilities, several attack paths. But if I click next on the slide, I can show one specific attack path when the VM, vulnerable VM, has also been found that contains secrets on it that will allow the attacker to authenticate with search account. Okay. Further other types of this, it could be the search account contains sensitive data, but that's object of another discussions. So as you can see, then you can look in the recommendations, and two main recommendations they are making the attack path is number one, that secrets were founded and vulnerability also were found on the server. So typically by remediating those two recommendations, you just break the chain and you complete, what you close the attack path. And with this, I will now say thank you and then hand the mic to my colleague, Tom. Tom, please take it over and drive the director on board.
Thank you very much. And thanks for the introduction. And yeah, great stuff you just mentioned. So yeah, the agentless scanning is one of the main capabilities that we released last year. We just recently announced the secret scanning capability, and there's more to come, which is something we will talk about in a bit. But first of all, let's start talking about the direct onboarding experience that we recently added to Defender for Servers. So if we take a look at how onboarding to Defender for Servers formerly looked like, then we had three different dependencies here. First of all, we have the native onboarding for Azure virtual machines. So you have an Azure VM, you have them running in an Azure subscription. You will enable Defender for Servers, no matter if it is Plan 1 or Plan 2 on top of that subscription. And then we will automatically be able to deploy Microsoft Defender for Endpoint as an agent into that operating system. And the machine is going to be onboarded into your M365 Defender security portal. So you will be able to see that machine in Defender for Endpoint. But also you will get that integration into Defender for Cloud, which means that vulnerability findings, just as Giulio just mentioned before, but also security alerts that are created by Microsoft Defender for Endpoint will show up in Defender for Cloud's security and recommendations portal. The second pathway to onboard machines is using our multi-cloud connectors. On top of the multi-cloud connectors that we are offering for AWS and GCP, if you enable the Defender for Servers plan on top of that, we will automatically deploy Azure Arc to your EC2 and your GCP compute instances. And on top of that, we will again attach the MDE extension to these machines to then deploy Microsoft Defender for Endpoint into the operating system. And then again, the machine is going to report into both portals. For on-premises servers, there is Azure Arc as the preferred way, because only with Azure Arc, we are able to deploy the Microsoft Defender for Endpoint extension for Windows and Linux. And without that extension, with the newer MDE version, we are not able to integrate into Defender for Cloud. So Azure Arc actually was the method to use when it came to Defender for Server and Defender for Endpoint onboarding on your on-prem servers. And that works in the way that as soon as you deploy Azure Arc to your on-premises machine, that machine will be connected to an Azure subscription that has Defender for Servers enabled. And then we can deploy the MDE extension on top of Azure Arc so that then the onboarding process will be running again. We oftentimes, however, got that question like, hey, Tom, I'm just looking into getting Microsoft Defender for Endpoint deployed to my machine. I'm trying to use Defender for Servers Plan 1, which is that plan that has as main value proposition the onboarding of Microsoft Defender for Endpoint and the integration into Defender for Cloud. But I do not want to leverage Azure Arc just for the sake of getting MDE deployed. So what can I do? Well, we listened and we now have a new onboarding experience with Microsoft Defender for Endpoint into Defender for Servers. So we're actually removing that step in between where Azure Arc is mandatory to get Defender for Endpoint deployed and integrated into Defender for Cloud. We will completely support all the protection and EDR management capabilities as part of Defender for Endpoint. And on the other side, you will get the same integration for security alerts and Microsoft Defender vulnerability management data into Defender for Cloud, with the benefit that you don't need to have a license for Defender for Endpoint, but you can use Azure's consumption-based pricing model, which means that if you switch off your server, you're not paying for it. What we did is we introduced a new concept that we call the designated subscription. The designated subscription is a setting that is done on one of your subscriptions in your tenant. And the server that is onboarded using direct onboarding will be integrated and built under this designated subscription. Enabling the direct onboarding is a setting that is done on a tenant level for Defender for Endpoint. And how does it actually work? So you will have to enable the designated subscription on one of your subscriptions. And you can do it by clicking on the direct onboarding blade, the new tile that we added into the environment settings. And if you click that blade, you will get this screen that shows you that you can enable direct onboarding and you have to select one dedicated subscription or a designated subscription. Now what you will do is you can leverage the Microsoft Defender for Endpoint onboarding process that you have been using for years, for example, based on SCCM or another config management solution of choice. So you will deploy Defender for Endpoint on your own according to your pipeline. And as soon as Defender for Endpoint is deployed to a machine and that machine shows up in the Microsoft Defender for Endpoint backend, we will connect that machine to the designated subscription. It will show up as a new resource type called servers in Defender for Cloud's inventory. So you can determine if that is an Azure VM, an Azure Arc resource, or a server that is connected via direct onboarding. And then billing and the alert and MDVM integration will start. Within that scope, you can not only have the you won't actually get all your servers integrated into the designated subscription, but it's more like we will be looking for servers that we do not already know. I'll give you an example. If we go back to that slide that we have seen before, where when it came to the different scenarios that we can leverage, if that is a machine that has been onboarded using the native onboarding mechanism, or if it is a machine in the multi-cloud environment leveraging Azure Arc on the multi-cloud connector, or if it is a machine that is already onboarded via Azure Arc, we do know it and we will not find that same machine in the Defender for Endpoint backend and connect it to the designated subscription. We will just be looking for additional servers that you are onboarding using the direct onboarding approach. Now, we have been talking about these two capabilities, and if we take a closer look at what that actually means, then with the direct onboarding, we are solving one of the frictions that customers have been reporting. So, hey, Tom, I don't want to have yet another agent just to deploy Defender for Endpoint. And the other aspect is that you have seen that agentless scanning not only offers the software inventory and vulnerability assessment capability, but in the meantime also secret scanning. So you see that this is a platform, not only as a single service that we are leveraging in Defender for Cloud. Going forward, we are actually continuing that approach. And we need to take a close look at the deprecation of the log analytics agent that is scheduled for August 2024. Giulio already shared all the capabilities that we have in our Defender for Servers plans, and especially in Defender for Servers Plan 2 and in the foundational CSPM aspect of Defender for Cloud, we have some capabilities that today rely on log analytics workspaces and the Microsoft Management Agent or Log Analytics Agent or the Azure Monitor Agent, which is the newer version of that. With the upcoming changes, we are going to do three different things here. The first thing is that, as I said before, the Log Analytics Agent will be deprecated in August 2024. And along that line, we will also deprecate the log analytics agent-based features in Defender for Servers and will deliver them over an alternative infrastructure, alternative mechanisms by April 2024. And the main goal here is to remove the dependency to the monitoring agent and to completely rely on the Agentless platform and on Microsoft Defender for Endpoint as a single security agent as part of Defender for Servers. With that, the Azure Monitor agent, which is the successor of the Log Analytics agent, will not be a requirement for Defender for Servers, but it will be required for Defender for SQL servers on machines. So if you have a machine in which you install Microsoft SQL, and you want that machine not only to be protected by Defender for Servers for the operating system level and so on, but more the SQL instance itself to be protected, you will have to deploy Azure Monitor Agent for this particular scenario. But it's out of scope of Defender for Servers. And also the auto provisioning process for the Log Analytics agent and the Azure Monitor agent will be adjusted accordingly. This is a step we already started with. Since this week, you will be able to see in the environment settings and if in settings and monitoring that there is not only an auto provisioning for Log Analytics agent and Azure Monitor agent, there is a new auto provisioning setting that we have added for Defender for SQL servers on machines. Going forward, the old auto provisioning process, as you know it, will be reduced so that you only have auto provisioning for Log Analytics agent, no longer for Azure Monitor agent as part of Defender for Servers. Now let's take a closer look. Going back to the different capabilities that we have, and we are mentioning that we will deliver these over MDE or agentless scanning, then we are especially talking about these capabilities in red, which is file integrity monitoring, the endpoint protection discovery, and the OS misconfigurations, which we call the security baseline assessments. For the rest, we do not transfer them into either the Agentless platform or the Microsoft Defender for Endpoint agent. The reason is that for missing OS patches, we already have 2 new GA recommendations. These GA recommendations are powered by the Azure Update Management Center. And with them, you can not only see the OS patches that are missing, but also remediate your resources. OS level security alerts have been integrated completely into Microsoft Defender for Endpoint. And with adaptive application controls as a feature as we know it today, that will be discontinued in August 2024. And new capabilities in the application control space, on top of what Defender for Endpoint and Windows Defender Application Control offer today already, is something we will be considering for the future. Now, with that being said, if there are some features or some dependencies that you have and you would like us to invest into the adaptive application control space, please let us know. We'll be happy to have a chat on that and to understand what is the need on your end. Now, the most important question actually would be, what about the customer's point of view? So we just explained what we did from an engineering and a product perspective, but what should you do? Well, the first thing is enable agentless scanning and the integration with Microsoft Defender for Endpoint today. If you do so, you will be covered. So as soon as we provide all the capabilities as part of Defender for Servers Plan 2 in agentless scanning and Defender for Endpoint by April next year, you will already have everything enabled and you will get the coverage as you want to have it. And then there are some scenarios that depend on the current situation that you are in. If you are already using Azure Monitor Agent in a preview as part of Defender for Cloud, then there is no additional action required unless you need all the capabilities in Defender for Servers in GA. So if you are leveraging file integrity monitoring and you are using Azure Monitor Agent for this, then we will not go GA with that combination. If you can use the public preview capability, you can continue. You don't need to change anything. As soon as you have MDE integration and agentless scanning enabled, you will be covered as soon as we provide the new capabilities. If you are using the Log Analytics agent still, then there are different scenarios. If you do not require Azure Monitor Agent in the future, which means that you are not looking into Microsoft Sentinel, you don't have any log ingestion scenarios in which you want to leverage Azure Monitor Agent, so you're just using it actually because you are using Defender for Servers, then you can remain on the Log Analytics agent and start to migrate it into AMA later, or completely remove it in April 2024. So as soon as the new platform is available. If you are a customer that needs to use AMA in the future, and file integrity monitoring, OS security baselines, and the endpoint protection assessments are required on your end, and you need them as part of the integration, then you can use both agents side by side. So for example, you can leverage Log Analytics agent for Defender for Servers capabilities, and you can use Azure Monitor agent for Microsoft Sentinel and log ingestion capabilities and scenarios. Or you can wait until April 2024 and then migrate from Log Analytics into Azure Monitor agent. And then there's the scenario that you are using Log Analytics agent and you need to use Azure Monitor agent in the future, but you are not looking into leveraging file integrity monitoring, the OS security baseline assessments, or the endpoint protection assessment. In this scenario, you can migrate to the Azure Monitor agent now, because there is no dependency on Log Analytics agent on your end, and it's already just decoupled from Defender for Servers in your environment. Now, this is all for customers that are already using Defender for Cloud with Defender for Servers and either Log Analytics or Azure Monitor agent. What about new customers, customers that are starting just today? Well, in this scenario, the Log Analytics agent, the legacy agent, as we call it, is required for Defender for Servers capabilities until April 24. So you need to have Log Analytics agent if you are looking into Defender for Servers capabilities that we mentioned before, which is file integrity monitoring, OS security baselines, and EPP. And then you can either remove that agent again or enable Azure Monitor agent according to your needs. So it really depends then if or if not you need the Azure Monitor agent. And with all of that, we would like to open it up for a Q&A.
Great. Thank you to both of you. Lots of questions coming in. Most of them are being handled from our SMEs, but we do have some that we can definitely elaborate further. So the first one goes, the VMs available features of the Defender for Servers, are they all also available for VMSS instances?
That's a great question. They are available for VMSS instances as long as you are using VMSS flexible orchestration. We currently do not support VMSS uniform orchestration yet.
Okay, thank you for that. And then we have Defender for Server Plan 1. Does it also include the license for the Microsoft Defender for Endpoint?
Yes, that's basically the main value proposition, or one of the main value propositions of Defender for Servers Plan 1. So Microsoft Defender for Endpoint is that EDR component that we are leveraging in both plans. And we also have that integration with Microsoft Defender Vulnerability Management. I think there was one question earlier in the chat that was like, what's the difference between MDE, like Defender for Endpoint, and Defender for Servers? And that actually goes into this direction. So Defender for Endpoint is just one of the capabilities that we are using in Defender for in Defender for Servers plans. But Defender for Servers actually is meant to have that overarching approach to connect all the servers, no matter where they are running, into a single dashboard, and not only from the operating system perspective that is the Microsoft Defender for Endpoint view, but rather from a CNAPP perspective, as Giulio mentioned it before. So we bring that into context with all the other platform and infrastructure services resources that you might have in any multi or hybrid cloud scenario. And in order to get these insights for vulnerability assessments, for the software inventory, and also the threat detection capabilities, that is the Microsoft Defender for Endpoint as a component that we are leveraging as part of both Defender for Servers plans.
If I may, Tom, one additional benefit, one additional caveat around MDE integrated with the Defender for Server, either P1 and P2. Well, basically P1, it is actually EDR MDE, is that for the EDR solutions for the MDE, you are no longer going to pay for the billable license per node, regardless if the server is up and running or it is even existing anymore, but rather you're going to pay based on the consumptions. So if you have 100 servers under the MDE license, you are required to pay 100 license, $5 each, so $500. During the year, maybe you only use 50 server up, and therefore you're still paying for the 100. Whereas if you look into Defender for Server, let's say P1 right now, okay, their 100 servers are maybe used for the first couple of months, and the rest of the year you're going to use only 20 or 30. Guess what? You're only going to pay for the 20 or 30 servers or equivalent uptime, because of the actual server plan is built by hour. So you technically, by moving from Defender for Endpoint license-based to, let's say, their P1 plan or P2 plan, you can, especially for the P1 plan, you can technically save money if the servers are not up and running all the time.
There's another one around the payment planning. Perhaps maybe we answered, but I want to make sure that we're covering its slightly different flavor. If removing AMA from servers where we just want to get logging, and we have to install, do we have to have installed MDE and pay for Defender plan?
It's also a great question. And I totally appreciate that it might be very complex with all the agents that we're having here.
And there's a follow-up question to that, Tom. Sorry to interrupt. And then it goes also for the non-prem servers, we would have to use MDE or ARC.
Okay.
Is that, yeah.
Yeah. So first of all, for the first part, the answer is no. You don't need to have Microsoft Defender for Endpoint or Defender for Servers if you're just looking for log ingestion. So if you want to have your logs sent to a log analytics workspace, you will go with Azure Monitor Agent, and you just don't have any dependency on Defender for Servers there. So you can also, going forward, if we are deprecating that integration, or where we say we are actually decoupling the agent from Defender for Servers, you can still deploy Azure Monitor Agent according to your needs, even if you have Defender for Servers. We will just not rely on that agent anymore in order to get the threat detection capabilities. So the answer for that is no. You don't need to pay for Defender for Servers just for logging. The second question is yes and no. You still need to have MDE, don't need to have MDE. But in order to get Azure Monitor Agent to your on-prem server, you need to deploy Azure Arc, because there is a hard dependency between the Azure Monitor Agent and Azure Arc. Or in other words, you cannot deploy Azure Monitor Agent without Azure Arc to a non-Azure server. So that is a dependency that will remain. It is a dependency outside of scope of Defender for Servers, but it's still a dependency you will have if you want to get AMA deployed to your on-prem servers.
Well, thank you so much for that. We have another question, and we have 3 more minutes before we end this call, so just an FYI. So will Microsoft publish the detect rule sets used in Defender for Endpoint? You already do this for Defender for Cloud rules.
It's a great question. I don't have a definite answer to that because it's a different product group working on Defender for Endpoint. As far as I know, they haven't done yet. So I'm not sure if there are plans to do that in the future. So sorry, we don't have an actual answer for that.
And obviously, again, as a reminder, this is a public call, meaning no NDA in place. So we have posted a link earlier for those discussions. You probably want to join our private community group. So let me just see if we have. Okay, if I use Defender for Endpoint, I think you already answered this one, so it's pretty much the same. As mentioned, the adaptive application control is deprecated. Do we have a roadmap for Linux? Okay, another roadmap question. Do we have a roadmap for Linux servers? When will be available? Do you have maybe a generic reply to this, Tom, or someone?
Well, actually, I do. I have seen a lot of questions regarding when will Microsoft make something available. And the best advice here would be to really join the CCP, the Customer Connection Program community, because that is our private community in which we are talking under NDA about our current plans, our private previews, what we are currently working on. I can promise there's quite a lot to take a closer look at. All the different teams that we have in the Defender for Cloud overall product group are heavily working on improving the product and bringing new features. So yeah, that would be the best advice, to go there, submit the request to be joined to that community, and then you will be able to get insights into what we're working on and also test it out in the private previews.
Cool. And I reposted or reshared the private community link here. Well, we are at the time here, and I want to wrap it up here real quick. And first of all, thanking both of you, Giulio and Tom, for this, for being our guest, first of all, today, and sharing this great knowledge with our community. And also would like to thank our SMEs who were helping here in the background, answering all these questions. In fact, they're still answering questions as I'm speaking here. And to all the listeners out there on the line, if you're someone who wishes to aid in the protection of the world from cyber threats, as well as desires to have a say in shaping our strategies, blueprints, and recommendations, we've been sharing that private community link where you can definitely make an impact and be part of our security community. So together we can make a global impact. And please join us at aka.ms/security community. This is also where you'll be notified about the upcoming webinars, changes like I mentioned at the very beginning, as well as events and other announcements. So please take a minute also by submitting your webinar feedback at our registration form at aka.ms/security webinar feedback. And for those of you who may have additional questions on the topic that we just covered, or even other product Microsoft Defender for Cloud related questions, please feel free to raise them on our Microsoft Tech community discussion space at aka.ms/NDC community. Thank you all for being part of our community and for joining us on these sessions. We hope to see you next time. So have a good one. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.